of continuous joy, bliss, or you became an arrogant, stubborn individual. You reject knowing the truth and so on. So we believe our life that we have comes with consequences with the choices that we have.
But do you believe that your God is kind of all loving?
God, when you say all loving, it's something that needs to be explained. God is loving,
Right.
and there's no one who can love more than God. So we say God is more loving than anyone else. God is more merciful than anyone else.
More loving than anyone else.
Yeah. Let me.
That's good enough.
But
Yes.
there are conditions attached to who can be the recipients of special love from God. There is two types of love from God. One is a general love for everyone, because that's His justice, being just. He gives this general love, and He shows them this guidance through His general love to every human beings. But He selectively gives a specific form of love, those who are recipient of that by fulfilling certain conditions. So for example, we say God is Ar-Rahman, merciful. God is Ar-Rahim, merciful. But there's a distinction between these two mercy. One mercy encompasses everyone in a general sense. Another mercy is that extends only to the believers. Everlasting mercy, not just temporal mercy. To explain to you a bit more, it's interesting.
I understand.
Fine.
Do you think there are good people who don't believe in the same God that you do?
Yeah.
Believe in?
So it's a very good question you ask, because that really differentiates between do we need God to be good? Do we need religion to be good or not? The question is grounded in the very concept of what is to be good. We say good is what you are doing in line with what God asks you to do. Good by itself doesn't exist in ether, in nowhere, because good is not something, a conscious entity like you're saying, I'm good like that. It doesn't exist. It's a quality that is described by our Creator, which we need to be in line with that to be called good.
Does that not seem a little bit tautological to you?
How?
That God will give more love to the people He deems as good, but he deems people as good by His own metric. Essentially, what you're saying is God has constructed His own morality, and then kind of He not necessarily not imposes it on us, but he differentiates between people by sort of how much they've conformed to His conception of morality.
So there's
but if I, as a human being, read the text of the Quran or any other religion, and there are things that I take issue with that I think are immoral, in fact, or perhaps amoral, or not necessarily, or not being consistent with what I think is moral as I understand it. Do you not see why I kind of have an issue with that? And would God accept such people into this afterlife?
So let me understand what you just said so far, and the concept of good, and why you have an issue with God dispensing His certain attributes more in a quantitative way on some than the others. Let me give you an analogy, a scenario to understand that. Suppose all of us work for a company, and we have the company who's going to give us the wages, right? You do all the things the company asks you to do. Convene meetings, contract deals, and so on and so forth. But me, for example, I don't do that, even though when I had the opportunity to do so. I deliberately, instead of working for the company, I try to help his company out, and so on and so forth. In situations like this, even though I'm employed by the same company, would it be just for the company to equally look at our work and say, I will not punish you with anything, but I will give you the same bonus that you get because of what you've done, and I will have the same bonus as well. So the bonus, right? We're talking about the bonus issue.
Yes.
Forget the punishment issue, the bonus. So you get the bonus for all that you've done, and all that I didn't do and did something contrary, I get the bonus. Would you say this is fair?
First of all, rewards and punishment are just the inverse of each other, right? So if God motivates people to do good because they'll be divinely rewarded, or because they don't want to be finally punished, I kind of see those as the same thing. If you're separating people into two groups, you can either say like reward not reward or punishment not punishment. I don't really see.
But I talked about bonuses between two, not punishment,
right,
bonuses.
So exactly, but this is why I'm making this point, because bonuses are a type of reward, not a type of punishment.
Yeah, both are the reward.
Sure.
So if both are rewarded equally.
It's interesting you're making this analogy and kind of putting the executives of the company in the...
I want you to understand something from real life.
In the position of
Feel
God.
free to jump in whenever you have to.
In your analogy, that's kind of what you're doing.
Can I just ask a simpler question? What is good according to you?
I don't have an objective description of what is good. It's something I think about all the time. There are many situations I encounter in my own life, or in fiction, or in other people's lives, where I don't have an immediate answer to the question of what is good in this situation, or what is the right thing, or what is the right thing for this person to do. I don't always necessarily have an immediate answer. When I encounter such situations, it'll most likely cause me to go away and think about what is good in that kind of situation, and hopefully that will evolve my moral thinking. But the important thing there is that it's all thinking happening inside my head, in conversation with other people as well, to kind of see what they think. Maybe someone can help me. I don't want to outsource it to someone or something outside of my experience, because I don't see how that is necessary.
And you use the word moral, so in terms of your perspective, would you say that morality is something which is real, or morality is something which is real but inaccessible, like a moral skeptic would say? What would be your perspective of morality?
I think morality is socially constructed.
Socially constructed.
Yes.
So give me a sort of example of something that we have morally constructed, which you subscribe to as being morally good.
Injunctions against rape and murder and theft and slavery would be some examples.
Okay,
Yeah.
so currently the injunction against murder,
Yes.
that is something which generally people agree about. But say in the what biologists call the environmental evolutionary adaptation, the hunter-gatherer societies, that wasn't there. So the social construct of the injunction of killing someone innocent was not there. That you're forbidden to do that. At that point in history, would you say it was morally permissible to kill somebody, or would you say that there is a morality which is...
This is a rather sort of like a progressivist or kind of Hegelian, if you're familiar with Hegel, sort of way of looking at history, the idea that kind of human civilization is kind of always progressing in terms of its morality, its ethics, its technology, its culture, all these kind of things. If you assume that human civilization as a whole, opposites disparate, but as a whole is kind of monotonically advancing, then we can kind of look back on hunter-gatherer societies with our modern ethical standards, and we can say that that's wrong. But yes, obviously from the perspective of hunter-gatherers at the time, they were tribal by definition, yes. And if people came and attacked their tribe, they did things to not only defend themselves and the people of their tribe, but kind to assert dominance over the other tribe. Now, obviously, I and hopefully everyone has all kinds of ethical issues with that today. But on the other hand, without that kind of virility, that sort of like desire, the assertion to live, maybe we wouldn't be here. So I don't know. In terms of more recent examples from history, where we have a lot more specific accounts of specific people and specific events, I think it's much easier to give a judgment on such things. But yes, of course, part of my idea of morality being socially constructed is that it changes over time.
Okay. So would you subscribe to say the view of the moral zeitgeist, which people like Richard Dawkins speak about? Because you sort of alluded to that there is some direction that we are headed towards. Would you say that that is historically and sociologically what we see in the history of humanity? So if we take something like the Greeks, right? The Greeks were more egalitarian than, you see, we have a counterexample, right?
Now, important thing in that progressive view is I said that the advancement of human civilization is monotonic. I do not necessarily agree that the progressivist view of history is correct. I don't think it is always monotonic. I mean, just think about, the fall of the Roman Empire, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, and all the kind of knowledge that was lost then. And then we had the Dark Ages in Europe. And yes, for centuries, the Islamic nations.
Stand down because we can barely hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Stand in the middle.
In the Middle East and Northern Africa,
But they can't hear, that's why I'm coming here.
flourished. They were from kind of, I don't know, 600 to 1200 AD. Yeah, the Islamic world was kind of, along with China, was the world leader in terms of like mathematics and engineering and all, culture, all these things. Yes. So it's not monotonic.
Yes. Okay. So we can agree there are some anomalies in that theory.
Yes.
Would you subscribe to the moral zeitgeist though, as a idea? Would you say that this is something you believe in?
Well, it depends. It depends whose morals you're talking about, what agenda, political and economic agendas are at play. It's, there are 8 billion people on this planet. It connects to the alignment problem. Like, yes, there might be this group of people over here that's trying to move the moral zeitgeist in this direction, but then there might be another group of people over here that's going in a different direction.
Yeah. Let's assume that the UN is our sort of representative as humanity. Let's just assume that. For the sake. I know that's a very contentious issue.
There's issues with
okay,
that,
so let's just say just war theory.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So the ideas there, some of the ideas from the Geneva Convention as well, some of the ideas from international relations perspective in terms of treaties. Some of these ideas are now pretty much universally accepted, right? Would you say that objectively humanity has gone to a better place?
I think if you want to talk about the UN specifically, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's one thing to talk about your laws and your beliefs. It's another thing to talk about actions or inactions for that matter.
Okay, so let me just clarify. I don't mean to say something prescriptive. I mean something descriptive. This is what's written by
In the charters, for example.
The charters, exactly. Yeah. It's not about whether the UN has the authority to prescribe those things and whether the UN is effective. What I'm trying to get to, just to give you the upshot of what I'm saying, if you do subscribe to any element of your morality being objective, as in we're better today than we were in the past, I believe the only way you could do that is through a theological argument, is not if somebody does not believe in God or something supernatural, they won't be able to do it. I'm just giving you the upshot of my argument,
Right, sure.
so you know where I'm going to be headed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not arguing the progressive viewpoint. I think morality goes up and down and sideways in different directions. However, I can be more specific. I can name specific examples, such as treatment of people who are not heterosexual, treatment of people of different races, all these kind of obvious examples. I can think about kind of fairly recent history where those people were kind of treated poorly officially by judicial systems, even in Western countries, and kind of unofficially by the populations as a whole. And the civil rights movement in America, Martin Luther King, that to me is an example of moral improvement of a kind.
I'm trying to understand
doesn't mean that there aren't still issues around race in America. Obviously there are,
I'm trying to
but
understand your perspective a little bit better, because you seem to be saying two different things. You seem to be saying there's no objective morality. I could be wrong. I'm just trying to understand. You seem to be saying there's no objective morality, it's a social construct, but at the same time, you do believe there's been progress. Now, progress is predicated on the idea that there's some standard benchmark objectivity. So there's two. I'm trying to understand your perspective better.
No.
Okay, sure.
So what I'm saying is I can identify specific cases where the way we treat this kind of person or this situation now is, in my view, more ethical, more kind, more humane than how we used to. No, it's not. I can't say it's subjective. It's just my opinion.
Can I put out a contention?
I can't prove it objectively because it's a social construct.
Can I put out a contention to that? I believe the idea of progress is incompatible with subjectivity, and progress can only be compatible with objective moral standards. Shall I repeat that?
Say more?
Sorry?
Can you elaborate on that? Why do you think
I believe if somebody believes in moral subjectivity, or they believe in, say, moral skepticism, that they believe there is objective morals out there but we can't access them, from both those perspectives, they can't subscribe to a progressive perspective or moral zeitgeist. You have to have a belief that morals exist, which are objective, and secondly, that they are accessible. When you have both these beliefs, then you can subscribe to something in regards to progress or the moral zeitgeist.
No, you're not listening to my argument. It's observational. The way I think about ethics is I look at things happening in the world, I identify cases or sources of suffering, and then I think, how could we reduce or prevent or alleviate the suffering?
Sure. Is suffering bad?
And when such alleviation happens, then I say this is an improvement. Yes, the core, it's a rule of thumb. It's not a perfect logical process, but yes, a core principle of how I think ethically and morally about the world is suffering is bad. Let's try and reduce suffering.
So I think if I may just to quickly understand what you're saying.
I don't think that's
so your position is suffering is bad. We want to eliminate, prevent, minimize, totally get rid of it if we can. That determines what progress is. So that's how we're working on. To you, morality is grounded on this concept, in your understanding, where people should not suffer. And we need to reduce the suffering. When we can reduce the suffering, then we have made progress. So that is to you not only subjective, it's actually an objective standard which everyone should follow, because you are not making your individual like I wish there would be no suffering. You expect and you desire that everyone accept this foundational understanding that suffering should be avoided.
No, that's why
I never, with respect, I never said that.
Okay.
I maintain, I'll repeat it again if you want me to say it again. This is how I personally think about ethics and morality. Many other people may also think about ethics and morality that way. I have not forced any of those people to think about the world in the same way I do. They merely have come to the same conclusion as me.
Sure. So the perspective that he elucidated right now, that is what I believe you were subscribed to. You seem to be saying two different things. You seem to be saying this is my perspective, as in it's subjective, but at the same time, you're being pretty categorical that reducing suffering is a good thing.
Well, yes, but of course the.
Do you see they're incompatible, these two ideas?
It's my personal opinion that reducing suffering is a good thing, and yes, I'm being subjective. The way those things interact is that is of the question of how we identify suffering, and that is also subjective, because there are many cases where we can think of where different people say one thing is suffering, what this isn't suffering, or this kind of, or in a slightly different way, oh, this kind of suffering is allowable, this one isn't.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because
Okay.
I believe you're muddying the waters a little bit. There is some type of suffering which is hard to. It's hard to categorically say it's bad, because say suffering when you're getting a tooth removed, you're getting that kind of stuff. We're not talking about that. There's other type of suffering, like for example, taking prisoners of war and torturing them, right?
Yeah.
So that type of suffering is something we can categorically say is wrong. So that type of suffering, you would say
yes, except it doesn't appear to be wrong to the people taking those prisoners of war, does it?
no, but clearly, we don't really. No. But clearly, we don't really care what their subjective view is. We objectively want to impose the fact that this is wrong.
No, we subjectively want to impose.
No. That's my belief.
Subjectively.
Is that, my belief is that there is an objectivity, which is why it's prescriptive for us to try and stop that action.
I don't think we need to refer to objectivity to come to that conclusion.
So why would people want to share your views that removal of suffering is a good thing? Why would people agree and accept what you think is only subjective? Why would, for example, people out there...
Again, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm not asking anyone to agree with any individual ethical statements I make. The only thing I want people to do is to be able to think about ethics and suffering and morality.
Can I give you an example?
Wait, let me finish my point. In an independent way, not influenced unduly by any external sources. You might, read fiction or non-fiction. You might take in all kinds of sources. You might talk to other people about ethics and suffering, and those opinions you hear might influence your worldview. But ultimately, you need to form your own worldview and then keep developing that throughout.
But how would you know something is better than what you already have? How would you know something is better than what already developed?
No, I can't know that, but I can think about it and just make a decision as to whether I think it's better.
Can I give
than
you an
what we previously
example?
had. That's the difference.
I think this example will help.
Maybe
Say,
about
let's
10 more
look,
minutes or something, yeah?
Maybe, inshallah.
Or
Yeah.
longer?
I
let's
don't know.
look at
Let's
the Bosnian
wrap it up in a
genocide,
few minutes,
right?
inshallah.
Okay.
What's happening in Bosnia in the 90s.
Yeah.
Do you think there was a moral duty for nations to intervene in the way that they did to stop the genocide?
First of all, first say I wasn't alive when that was happening.
If you were there, hypothetically.
I'm not perfectly up to speed on all the historical details, but I do. Generally, I generally know there was a genocide in Bosnia.
Sure.
I know some aspects of it. Yes.
I want to give you
So
my
in,
theory.
if you want to talk about, so in terms of like interventionism, this is a very interesting topic ethically. It's something I think about a lot. It's something I struggle with. I think, for example, that the American campaign in Vietnam in the 60s was a terrible, morally abhorrent war crime.
And if you had
10
power,
minutes?
would you intervene?
10 minutes? Inshallah.
If, say,
you
you were a
have to
powerful
call us in
nation.
10 minutes so that we can go.
Sorry?
Remind us, anyone,
Vietnam
10 minutes and then...
was obviously bad. But then if you think of more recent interventions, such as the one in Iraq to kind of oust Saddam Hussein, now obviously you can look at Iraq and the state of it today and what's happened since then, and certainly the Western handling of Iraq post Saddam Hussein is far from perfect, and I know many people that died and suffered as a result of that intervention. So it wasn't perfect,
I think
but I think it's more arguable than Vietnam. So the point I'm making is intervention is a complex question, and I think I'm thinking about it on a case by case basis.
I think what's happening is there's a lot of muddying of the waters happening again, because we're going into.
Excuse me. I'm not muddying the waters. I'm just trying to explain a complex position.
but that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry. I apologise. I don't have a simple, ready-made answer.
So
for you.
if we leave aside Bosnia and Iraq, if we go to a hypothetical scenario
Yes.
where you know there is oppression happening, there's suffering happening, my theoretical framework, I'll just lay it out for you, is that I believe objective morality exists, it's accessible, and they are objective moral duties.
How is it accessible?
Okay, I'll explain all of this, right?
Sure.
So the existence of it is based upon the existence of God.
Right. On that point, I'm open.
Can I lay out the framework
Sure,
first?
yes.
Okay? So the existence of morality is based upon the existence of God. Okay? The understanding of what that morality is, because remember, you can believe in objective morality, but if you can't access it, like a moral skeptic would say, you can't access it, then it's useless. You might as well not have a standard. So I believe the understanding of what is right and wrong comes from two sources. It comes from revelation, and it also comes from what in Islam is called the fitrah, our natural disposition. And the third is the moral duty of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is an injunction that God gives. So all of this is based on theology.
Sure.
I believe if someone does not have theology, they can't justify intervention, and they can't justify saying we are making progress or suffering is bad and we should reduce it. I believe all those things are incoherent if you don't have this perspective.
Why is theology first of all, I would contend that theology is a way to access morality in the first place, but you seem to not...
Say that again?
I would contend theology is a way to kind of access morality, certainly objective morality in the first place, but you seem to not only be saying that, but also that it's the only way of doing that.
I would negate...
Why do you think that's the case?
Sure. So let me be clear with my claim. Not only am I saying, like you said, it's a way to access morality, I'm negating all types of
other methods, yes.
All types of moral
etc.
systems and ethical systems,
Sure.
if they're not theologically grounded.
That's exactly
negating them totally, categorically.
So saying that, as an atheist, you're basically saying I can't be moral, right?
Okay,
is that what you're saying?
Let me rephrase that. I believe you as an atheist can never be a moral realist if you are an atheist.
Moral realist.
As in, you believe morals exist in reality, and they are moral values, and there's moral duties.
Oh right. Well, I never said they were.
No, I'm saying an atheist.
I said they were subjective and socially.
No, that's fine. You as an atheist can say that. What I'm saying is, an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in God and an agnostic can never believe in objective values and objective duties.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what? What's the point?
Look, I'm just elucidating on my worldview.
Fine, but it doesn't.
Now, what follows from there is the question of progress is actually be meaningless because you can't.
Incoherent.
It's not that coherent. When you say progress, you already have a standard that you are using this to say I'm passing that, and that's why its progress is, or degress if you want to call that if you're not doing that.
I referred to the very vague and sometimes flimsy standard of evaluating suffering in people and animals as well. If you that's a separate thing.
But people can have a difference of opinion what it means to is suffering good or bad,
course.
and those
I said that. Yes.
I know that's what I'm saying, and that's why I'm saying you can't say that this is progress. They will tell you no, this is not progress because we don't accept this kind of framework. So if you want to accept,
it's my opinion.
I know. That's what you've been telling throughout.
I can't elevate
Felix,
it any higher than that.
you said so. You said this is your personal, subjective understanding and interpretation of the world of ethics and morality. But if you have a framework